At 72, I stopped talking to everyone for a whole month, and it was the best thing I ever did. It sounds a little crazy, and my friends were deeply worried about me. They assumed I was depressed or isolating myself from the world because of some hidden trauma. I completely understand why you might think the exact same thing right now. Maybe you feel entirely overwhelmed by the constant noise of daily life, or maybe you are simply exhausted from always being available for everyone else's problems. But before you dismiss my choice as a mistake, I want to share 6 vital things I discovered during that time of pure silence. However, what I found was not a dark and heavy loneliness. It was a profound sense of freedom that changed my perspective entirely. And once you step away from the endless chatter, getting back in tune with your own soul is a beautiful and healing experience. Stay with me until the end, because some of these insights might truly surprise you and challenge how you live. And if you know someone who feels completely drained by constant social obligations, this video might be exactly what they need to hear before they burn out completely. Now let's get started. Number 1, reclaiming my mental space. The biggest shock after beginning my month of silence was not the quiet house, the empty calendar, or the sudden lack of phone calls. Instead, it was the realization that my mind was finally my own again. Before I started this experiment, my brain was always filled with the voices and needs of other people. I worried constantly about my daughter, planned my week around my friends, and spent hours thinking about what I should say next. I would wake up and immediately check my messages, letting the demands of others dictate my morning. But inside my quiet month, I quickly realized that my mental energy was returning to me. Everything ran on my own internal rhythm. Breakfast was eaten in total peace without a chatty neighbor, interrupting my thoughts. I remember my first week in silence, waking up in a room that felt almost too quiet. I sat up, stretched, and reached for my phone out of habit. But when I looked at the blank screen, a realization hit me. I had absolutely nothing I was required to respond to. The constant mental chatter, the little worries I had spent years caring for, others were suddenly gone. In their place was a calm clarity, a quiet space I had not felt in decades, and a feeling I could not shake. I was finally in charge of my own thoughts. The hardest part was realizing how much of my inner peace I had given away over the years. You adapt because you want to be a good friend. You stop noticing the mental drain when people tell you their problems day after day. You learn to carry their weight, but in the process, you lose your peace of mind. There was a woman named Clara, 68 years old, who always hosted the weekly card games. She spent days preparing and recovering, never having a moment for herself. When she finally took a break, she told me she had forgotten what her own thoughts sounded like. If you are feeling overwhelmed, ask yourself this question. Are you ready to take back the mental space that makes your mind peaceful? Because once you find that quiet again, you will cherish it. Number 2, discovering authentic desires. One profound truth about stepping away from every single conversation is realizing how many of your daily choices were actually made to please others. When I first began my month of solitude, my family assumed I would be terribly bored and lonely. I believed them too, and in the beginning, I certainly was. My days used to be filled with lunch dates, committee meetings, and helping my neighbors with their endless errands. For a little while, it felt like I had lost my entire routine, without those social anchors. But as the silent days went by, the quietness forced me to look deeply inward. I started asking myself what I actually wanted to eat for dinner. Instead of just cooking the meals my family used to prefer, I picked up a paintbrush for the first time in 40 years, something I had always put off because my friends preferred playing bingo. Suddenly, I found myself sitting alone in my sunroom, realizing that I had spent decades living a life shaped entirely by the expectations of the people around me. It was not that my friends forced me to do things I hated. Our lives just naturally blend together over time. When you are constantly talking to people, it is incredibly easy to assume that their interests are your interests and that you do not need your own separate hobbies. I had to relearn how to ask myself simple questions. Do I even like the books I have been reading for my book club? Or am I just reading them to have something to say on Tuesday afternoons? The answers were shocking to me. I realized I actually disliked most of the fiction we read. I remember sitting by the window, debating whether to turn on the radio, just to fill the room with familiar voices. I did not want to feel the heavy weight of the silence. I did not want to admit that I did not know how to entertain myself, without a conversation to lean on. So I left the radio off. And that is when a massive realization washed over me, showing me that this was my rare chance to rediscover myself. I knew a man named Richard, 74 years old, who had spent his retirement managing a social club. He was always organizing events and talking to members. But after an illness forced him to stay home in silence for a few weeks, he started wood carving again. He looked at me later and confessed that the silence gave him back a piece of his soul he thought was gone forever. When you stop listening to the opinions of others, you finally have the space needed to hear your own heart. If you are thinking about taking a break from your social circle, ask yourself this question. Are you prepared to face the person you have hidden away for so long? Because no matter how much you love your friends, spending time alone is the only way to truly find yourself again. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 2 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now let's move forward. Number 3, healing emotional exhaustion. When I started my month of silence, I thought I was just taking a temporary break from talking. I did not realize I was also stopping the endless flow of emotional baggage I carried for everyone else. At home before this experiment, I was the designated listener for my entire family and friend group. I had the daily phone calls with my sister about her financial struggles, the weekly coffee dates listening to my neighbor complain about her health, and the constant updates from my grandchildren about their stressful jobs. Even the small interactions, chatting with the grocery store clerk or waving to the mail carrier, required a tiny piece of my emotional energy. But in my month of silence, all of those daily emotional deposits completely stopped. My phone was turned off and my door remained closed. At first, I told myself I was being selfish and that I was abandoning the people who desperately needed my support. But after a few weeks of pure quiet, I realized something incredible was happening to my body and mind. The heavy tightness in my chest, a feeling I had carried for years, slowly began to fade away. I saw the same exhaustion in other seniors, 2 people who had spent their entire lives caring for others and were now running on empty. There was a woman named Barbara, 71 years old, who was the cornerstone of her family. She was always rushing to babysit, cooking meals for sick friends, and answering her phone at all hours of the day. But one afternoon, she collapsed from sheer exhaustion, physically unable to take on one more problem. She was forced into a period of quiet recovery, and she told me it was the first time she realized how heavy other people's problems truly were. I knew exactly what she meant. When you are constantly listening to the worries, fears, and complaints of others, your brain absorbs that stress as if it were your very own. Your nervous system never gets a chance to fully reset, leaving you in a constant state of mild anxiety. Without the constant stream of conversations, my mind finally had the space to process my own feelings, instead of managing everyone else's emotions. I started waking up feeling genuinely rested, something I had not experienced since I was in my 50s. That is the hidden danger of being a good listener. You absorb the anxiety of the world until you have absolutely no room left for your own joy. The more you listen to everyone else, the more emotionally drained you become, even if you are not consciously aware of it happening. If you are considering stepping back from your social obligations, ask yourself this question. What gives your emotional life meaning? And are you sacrificing your own well-being to support everyone around you? Because once you step away from the noise, finding your energy again is not just about resting your voice. It is about fighting to protect your own heart from the heavy burdens of the world.
Number 4, enhancing physical well-being. Before I stopped talking for a month, I was doing fairly well for my age physically. I was not running marathons or lifting heavy weights, but I could still take care of myself and go for daily walks around my neighborhood. I had my little routines that kept me moving, like grocery shopping, stretching in the mornings, and walking to the community center to meet friends. But once I entered my month of silence, my physical health changed in ways I never anticipated. At first, it seemed like I was just resting my vocal cords and saving a little bit of breath. If I needed something, I simply did it myself without discussing it first. But what I did not realize was that the absence of stressful conversations was actively healing my physical body. I stopped clenching my jaw during frustrating phone calls, and soon my chronic headaches completely vanished. I sat outside in the garden more than I used to, breathing deeply without the urge to fill the air with meaningless chatter. The physical tension I had spent years carrying in my shoulders was disappearing faster than I ever expected. And it was not just my muscles relaxing. My blood pressure, which had been creeping up for the last 10 years, finally stabilized at a healthy level. The constant stimulation of talking, reacting, and processing information had been keeping my body in a state of low-level fight or flight. I remember my neighbor, Thomas, a 76-year-old man who was always involved in heated political debates at the local diner. He used to argue passionately every single morning, insisting that staying engaged kept his mind incredibly sharp. But after a severe medical warning about his heart, he took a month off from the diner and stayed home in total silence. One day, he looked at me and said he felt like a new man, completely free from the chest pains that used to plague him daily. And that is exactly what it felt like for me. When you stop engaging in stressful dialogue, you give your nervous system permission to finally calm down. And in a culture where everything is designed to keep us communicating constantly, it is incredibly easy to forget that silence is not just about mental peace. It is absolutely essential for physical survival. If I had known how quickly my body would heal in the quiet, I would have taken a vow of silence years ago to protect my health. If you are considering a similar break, ask yourself this important question. Will you have the courage to step away from the stress when every conversation seems urgent and necessary? Because once you slow down and embrace the quiet, getting your health back becomes a beautiful reality. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 4 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward. Number 5. Shifting my relationship dynamics. One of the things I did not fully consider before beginning my month of silence was just how much my relationships would fundamentally change. At home, before my experiment, I was always the person who reached out first. I called my friends to check on them, organized the family dinners, and made sure everyone stayed connected. But in my month of silence, that dynamic was completely shattered. From the moment I stopped reaching out, I felt a strange shift in how people treated me. Without my constant effort, some relationships simply faded into the background, while others surprisingly grew stronger. I know my friends were just busy with their own lives, but it is not easy to accept that some people only talk to you because you do all the heavy lifting. I remember my second week of silence, struggling with the realization that certain friends had not even noticed I was missing. Want to know who truly values your presence? Stop talking for a month and see who actually comes looking for you. It was a painful but necessary lesson in understanding my own worth. Even my relationship with my children shifted dramatically. Because I was no longer offering daily advice or listening to their minor complaints, they were forced to solve their own problems. And to my absolute surprise, they did just fine without my constant input. I was lucky to have a daughter who respected my boundaries. But I heard stories from others who realized their families only valued them for what they could provide. There was a woman named Margaret, 75 years old, who stopped calling her adult sons for just 2 weeks to see what would happen. She sat by the phone waiting, but they never called, assuming she would eventually break the silence first. It broke her heart, but it also set her free from the exhausting obligation of chasing their affection. Relationships are a hard thing to evaluate objectively, and I did not realize how unbalanced mine were until I completely removed myself from the equation. When people only reach out when they need a favor, when you are spoken to like a free therapist instead of a cherished friend, and when your daily interactions are dictated by the needs of others, it changes you. You start feeling less like an individual and more like a tool for everyone else's convenience. Taking a month of silence forces the people in your life to respect your space and reevaluate your role in their world. If you are considering stepping back from your social circles, ask yourself this crucial question. Are you prepared to discover which of your relationships are truly genuine and which ones are merely convenient? Because once you see the truth, it is incredibly hard to go back to pretending everything is fine. Number 6. Realizing how hard it is to reconnect. When I first started my month of silence, I told myself it was strictly temporary. I thought I would take a break, enjoy the peace and quiet, and then effortlessly slide right back into my normal social life. But what I did not realize was just how hard it would be to start talking again once I had experienced the profound beauty of silence. At first, it seemed incredibly simple. I would just turn my phone back on and resume my daily chats. But my perspective had fundamentally changed. The conversations that used to feel normal now felt incredibly superficial and exhausting. When my friends started complaining about the exact same trivial issues they were upset about a month prior, I found it difficult to pretend I cared. They asked if I was feeling okay, wondering why I was suddenly so reserved and distant. And then there was the issue of my newly discovered boundaries. After weeks of living in a peaceful environment where I did not have to argue, agree, or validate anyone else, my tolerance for pointless drama was completely gone. The social stamina I once had started slipping away, making the idea of attending a crowded dinner party more dreadful than I ever imagined. I was no longer confident in my ability to tolerate small talk, and that realization kept me isolated even after the month was officially over. I met others who had the exact same experience after going on silent retreats. They thought they would just cleanse their minds for a little while, only to realize that re-entering the noisy world was jarring. The longer you stay in complete silence, the harder it becomes to adjust to the chaotic demands of life outside your quiet bubble. Some people even lost their desire to socialize entirely, preferring the rich inner life they had cultivated during their solitude. That is the part nobody ever tells you about seeking peace. Experiencing true silence feels like a temporary vacation, but for most people, it fundamentally alters their brain chemistry. The quiet slowly becomes your sanctuary, and before you know it, the loud outside life you once navigated effortlessly starts feeling like a distant, unpleasant memory. If you are considering taking a long break from talking, ask yourself this question. Are you prepared for the possibility that once you experience true peace, returning to the noise might not be as simple as you think? Because once you settle into your own quiet company, the barriers to reconnecting can be harder to overcome than you expect. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 6 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward. Final thoughts. Looking back on my experience, I do not regret taking a month of silence, but I do regret believing that constant communication was my only option for a fulfilling life. I walked into my retirement years expecting social engagements to provide comfort, safety, and a better quality of life. What I found instead was a noisy world that slowly took away my independence, my mental privacy, my personal purpose, and even my deep sense of self. Does that mean all talking and socializing is entirely bad? Not necessarily. Some people genuinely need a high level of daily interaction to feel energized and loved. But before you commit every waking hour to other people, think carefully about what you are giving up in exchange. Because once you let the noise consume your life, your inner voice will never be the same. If I could do it all over again, I would have fought much harder to protect my quiet time, explored more ways to set healthy boundaries without feeling guilty, and made sure I truly needed to attend an event before making such a draining commitment. And if you are feeling overwhelmed by your own social calendar today, I hope you take the necessary time to ask yourself a serious question. Is this constant chatter truly what is best for me? Or is it just what seems easiest and most expected right now? Because the peaceful life you have today, your quiet routines, your mental independence, and your personal choices is worth holding on to for as long as you possibly can. Thank you for joining us today. We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share one thing you learned today and how you plan to use it in your life. Your thoughts are important to us, so don't hesitate to share them. Reading your comments gives us great motivation and encouragement. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.